Welcome to Founderology Built to Breakthrough. My name is Kathleen Wood, and I am the host of the Founderology podcast. And you know what I love about the Founderology podcast today is that we are talking to founders who are truly building brands built to break through. And we're getting into the tough decisions they had to make, the critical milestones they hit, and how they continue to lead and drive their brands to new levels of success. In addition to being the host of the Founderology Built to Breakthrough podcast, I'm also the founder of Kathleen Wood Partners, a growth strategy firm that is dedicated to working with founder-led businesses to propel them to new levels of success and scalability as they grow their brands to break through. I'm also the co-host of the Founderology Growth Summit, the only event in the entire food service industry where we bring visionary restaurant founders together to talk about tips, techniques, to share insights, to share the inside track for how to build your company to break through. And today, I'm very thrilled to have our guest, Ryan Thorman, founder and CEO of Bango, with us. Ryan has been to the Founderology Growth Summit. He has seriously been such a major contributor and somebody who has given tips and techniques to so many founders as they're growing their business that I am just excited, Ryan, for you to be on the Founderology podcast today. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kathleen. Great to see you again. And I really appreciate the invite and happy to chat with you and coordinate with other founders as always.
Yeah, this is going to be great. So Ryan, I thought, I'm a big fan of Bango. Every time, you and I have obviously worked together in the past, but I do know every time I make it out to Long Island, it is my first stop leaving the Islip Airport. I have my own menu item that I love there, but maybe you could tell our guests a bit more about Bango. So we have just some context to talk about the amazing growth path that you're on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Bango play in the better for you space. We originally started as a little tiny 300 square foot acai bowl shop and really have evolved over the years. We kind of rest our hat on the diversity of our menu now. We've kind of evolved into this full better for you menu with, items in categories such as salads, poke bowls, grain bowls, acai bowls, smoothies. We really kind of dove into the diversity of the menu and trying to, be in that health space, but also try to reach as many different people as possible, but still execute at a really high level. Right. So I think with that kind of lends itself to our menu and our customers coming back a lot more. We see customers 3, 4, 5 times a week. Right. And that speaks to the quality of our food, the health benefits of our food, and then most importantly, the flavor of our food. We feel strongly that the combination of those 3 things is really what makes Bango what it is today and why our customers love us so much.
Yeah. And I think, Ryan, one of the things that I love is you're carving the path for the better for you movement. And I think sometimes when people hear healthy, they think it's not going to taste good or I'm not going to eat that. But one of the things that I love that you're pioneering with the better for you movement is that your food is delicious. It is craveable. It checks all the boxes, but also makes you feel good, when you've had one of the bowls or a smoothie or something to that effect.
Yeah, one thing we always say is listen, if you're going to sustain a healthy lifestyle, you have to really enjoy what you eat, right? Like you can go on a crash diet and you can go on a cleanse where you don't eat anything, but those things come to an end and you fall off the wagon pretty quick, right? We put just as much emphasis on the flavor of food as we do the health benefits of food, right? Because in order to sustain that lifestyle, you have to actually enjoy what you eat and look forward to coming back for your next meal.
Yeah, that's what I love, cracking the code on that. So Ryan, just another point of context. How many locations do you have right now? How are you growing? And what does that look like for everybody to give our listeners some context?
Yeah, absolutely. We currently have 10 operating locations. We do have 2 more that are going to be open probably in the next 3 months here. They're in the midst of construction as we speak. And then we have 5 more in development after that. We primarily grew just corporate only for our first 7 stores. Then our last few are actually franchise owned. Our last 3 opened are franchise owned. We did open 1 more corporate store last year. I think our main focus at this point is trying to grow via the franchise model and trying to be the best possible partner we can with our franchisees and obviously try to make them as much money as possible. So they want to open more and more people want to join on and kind of join the Bango movement.
Well, I think the timing of our conversation is going to be perfect because you're just kind of in the middle of almost doubling the size of the company within the next 12 to 18 months. So this is definitely one of these great conversations for being stuck in the middle, right? And, just for context on that too, stuck in the middle is a term that we use at Kathleen Wood Partners to describe when you're too big to be small and you're too small to be big and you're kind of stuck. And I find working with founders over the years that these moments of being stuck in the middle happen at various levels of growth. It's not just when you're small. You could be a much bigger organization. You could still be too big to be small and too small to be big and still find yourself stuck. So one of the things that, I'd like to talk about today is kind of just like in the beginning when you had to start, when you made the decision, hey, we're going to start to grow, that definitely has implications, right? Because what size were you when you started to make that decision? And then what were some of the critical decisions you made so that you could get yourself onto that path?
Yeah, I think the journey as an entrepreneur has a million of these stuck in the middle moments. Like you definitely hit an inflection point
Right.
as a business, but like you hit little steps of this all throughout where you have to make those hard decisions, and that's what being an entrepreneur is about, right? So I think we've gone through a bunch of those when, I think we kind of nonchalantly grew at first, to be completely candid, is like, hey, let's, we didn't know what we were doing. Like we opened first when we opened, okay, this one's doing really well. Let's throw this against the wall, see if it sticks. We opened a few more. And then it was like, okay, now we need to tweak our concept. So like for the first 4 or 5 years, I really feel like we were just figuring out what the hell we were doing. We were young, dumb, just kind of gunslinging, not really had a full concept like ironed out. Right.
Right.
And then honestly, like right before COVID hit, that's when we really like committed to what we sat down with you and kind of worked through our mission, worked through our vision, put that stuff on paper. And that's when we like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start making all this stuff in house. We're going to be this fresh, made to order concept that has a diverse menu, right? And that's where some of the harder decisions, like that you have to make, goes. Now first we got to figure out our trajectory. Now that we had our trajectory, it's like, okay, now how do we work backwards to say, okay, if we want every store to do at least $1 million, like what are all the different things that we need in place to make sure that happens? Right. So I think like any big decision, it's like set your goal and then you start building your roadmap to fill in on how you reach your goal.
Yeah, I think that that's so well said because I think when I met you, you were successful, working hard, obviously having a brand that people were loving and visiting, on so many occasions. But then it was like, okay, we're all working, but where does it go? So I think that first critical decision is we've got to make a decision on what are we building here and why are we building it? So then you got to the next stage of that, right? So the roadmap got put out, the milestones were in there. And then the next phase comes with, we're going to start franchising.
Yep.
So how did that decision come into play for you?
Yeah, I think it was a few things, right? Like being in it, right? Operating every day, like you said, is really hard to take the step back and be like, okay, now I have to actually sit down and do some strategy, right? Like I think being an operator is the easiest job to just get out every day and operate and you not accomplish everything because you could stay busy all the time, right? So like once we decided on our vision, mission, right, all that, we're like, okay, now we're going to grow. We talked about the different ways we could grow. You can go through a corporate strategy, right? You can go through franchising, licensing. We just felt that our model was a perfect fit for franchising, right? We don't use any traditional hood systems, right? We use combi ovens in all of our stores, which allows us to really leverage a small footprint, right? Low build out cost, easy to execute menu, right? All the things you hear when you're thinking about, oh, this is a great franchise concept. Like, oh, we're actually checking all these boxes, right? Like maybe this is kind of the route to go. And that's really what kind of led us to that decision. Like, okay, if there's a really good cash on cash return here, the low build out cost, like if we can get these things doing a certain amount of revenue, right, or replicate the revenues we're doing, like this is a really good franchise model, and we think we could, scale this across the East Coast, across the nation, right? And that's what we're trying to do now.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and congratulations on the success that you are.
Thank you.
You've got the movement on it. the stores are opening, that, it's all happening now, right? Everyone
Yep.
says, oh, it's going to happen in a minute, but it really is happening now. And so I was curious, as you've been growing it, right? You've got the corporate stores, franchise stores, you're still actively engaged on many levels in this. How have you found, what have been the decisions you've had to make to say, hey, we still need to preserve the roots of what we started and the authenticity of that. But however, now we're expanding it to franchises. And sometimes, when you make that shift over to franchising, a lot of people, there's some friction points in there because people are like, hey, we're going to give you this great opportunity. However, you have to follow the systems, and how have you kind of managed that process? Because I think a lot of times I find founders don't want to grow, or founders don't want to franchise because they don't want to let go of that perceived control of
Yeah.
everything.
It's definitely a very challenging part. Like I've been in it for 7 years, like fully immersed in it. Right. So like being able to hand the keys over to somebody else and then sit back and watch them operate. Like I'd be lying if I say I still don't struggle with that today. Right. But the way that I kind of exercise my demons, if you will, is like, I'm just the same guy. Now I just give everything that I would give to my corporate stores, I give to my franchisees. Right. I'm transparent to a fault at points, but like if people call me for support, right, like they can call me anytime, any day. I'm going to treat a franchise store the exact same way I treat a corporate store, right? I'm not going to overstep and tell them, things that they don't need to know on how to run a business, but like I just make myself available at all times. So I feel, right,
Right,
at this stage, the more involved me and my team can be, the more we can lend our assistance, right? The more likely that franchise is
right,
going to stay on the path, right? If the communication is we're talking literally every day, every other day, like they're going to be pretty aligned with the
right,
brand and pretty aligned with all the things that our corporate stores are doing, right? If I just open a franchise and say, hey, I'll collect my royalty check once a week and I'll talk to you, every other month, like, how is a franchise going to feel about that? And what is the chances of that franchisee sticking true to our brand vision and goals, right? If they're not seeing me live it and, be hands-on helping them every day, right? So I've really tried to instill that with our team, right? Myself and our team is like, hey, there's no difference between a corporate store or a franchise store. We treat everyone exactly the same. There's a few things we have to tread lightly around, but like our level of support is exactly the same. We are here to help everyone, right? We want successful restaurants. We want happy customers. Like that's the end goal here. Whatever we have to do to attain that, that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I love that because I think that the key to success is building a healthy franchise organization, right?
Yeah.
Like the adversarial us versus them doesn't help anybody in the process, right?
Yeah.
That's part of the friction of it, right? And I know that there's all these confines of franchising that everyone needs to work within, but I love the idea of the shared vision that we all work together, we all win together. And even though you're the franchise, we have the corporate, our collectively, we all win together when we work together. And I think that that's a great foundation to build a healthy franchising system from. I was curious though, because if
Yeah,
someone's
absolutely.
listening to you right now and they're like, how is he keeping up with this? Right. So for you, what's been probably, because leaders can get very stuck in the middle as well. What's been probably for you your greatest opportunity and your greatest challenge as you've been in it, but also now transitioning to lead the business too?
Yeah, I think in any business, right, the biggest challenge seems to always be around people and team, right? And I think we've had our fair share of challenges there. When we first got off the bat, I think we hired some higher priced executives to help join the team. They ended up not being the right fit, right? So introducing people to your franchise system, them not accomplishing what you want them to accomplish, right? And then having to walk that back with your franchisees. And then we eventually moved to a shared service model with the rest of our hospitality group, Upstream Hospitality, right? Which has really been a blessing in disguise. So from a challenge standpoint, we had to make that mistake of like hiring some people that weren't the exact right fit for what we're trying to accomplish, walking that back,
Right.
identifying a new solution, something that was in front of us the whole time, right? Rolling out this shared services model with our hospitality group, and now being able to like really be able to do things at a much better scale and a much higher level. So that's certainly a challenge. I think from an opportunity standpoint, there's opportunities every day, and how you make the brand better, how you make your relationships better. But again, like it really goes back to team. Like that's what I have found is like the team is obviously everything. Like for any founder who's out there who's like, worried about hiring people, I will say, being a founder, there is no better feeling than when you finally hire somebody and you sit in a meeting and you're like, holy, this person is better than I am at this, and I don't have to worry about this anymore. Right. Like I have a great operator, I have a great marketing team. And like for the first time, I'm like, oh my God, these guys got it. I'm going to go do something else. Right. So like that is just a
Right.
unbelievable burden that is lifted off your chest. And if you haven't felt that, like that's why you hire, because once you do feel that, it's like, oh my God, that is just amazing.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, Ryan. I just wrote about this in my newsletter like 2 weeks ago, and I said, when you hire a true leader into your organization, when you're a founder, right, and you hire a true leader into your
Yep.
organization, three magical things happen. One, you get speed because you don't have to explain everything. Two, you get experience because they can bring more tools and resources to it. And then three, you get the ability to take so much off your plate so you could go focus on what you really want to focus on, which is growing a successful and
Yep.
healthy brand. So I'm just going to mic drop you there
Yep.
because I thought that was phenomenal, phenomenal.
I was just saying it's so true. It's like you don't know that feeling until you have it. And it's like when you have it, it's like, oh my God, like every consultant ever worked with, any person tells me this will happen, and then you don't believe it till it actually happens. So like, oh my God, that is true. And this is really nice.
Yes. I remember some of those conversations, Ryan. And I would tell you that that's what I think for founders, it's a hard, that's what we always say, like, look, we know it's a big, we know it's a step, we know it's a big step, but you don't have to take all the steps right now. But if you make one step, you will be amazed by how much things will improve and the speed that you'll get from that. And I think for you, Ryan, if we stay on that for just another moment, what has that
Yep.
meant to you personally and professionally as a leader to now have a team of other qualified leaders that you're working with?
Yeah. I mean, it frees up your mind space to actually strategize. Right. And I think when you and I first started working together, it's like, hey, you got to set time blocks to strategize. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, lady? Like, I don't have time to set a time block. I wake up and I'm working. I'm pretty much working while I fall asleep. I don't have any time to think about what I'm doing next. Right. But once you have the right people in place, you all of a sudden start to realize like, oh, I actually do have time to do this. I have time to do that. And that's what sets the next 3-5 years of your organization. Like, you're not going to get somewhere unless you actually take a step back and say, okay, this is where I want to go and this is how we're going to do it. If you just kind of get up every day, like I said with the operations thing, if you just get up every day and go through the motions and operate, like it's going to be really hard to actually hit a goal, right? Like putting those goals on paper, setting your team up to understand what the goals are, what the milestones are, what our KPIs are, right? Those things are what helps move the business along, which I've learned over years, right? Like you actually have to have
Yeah.
a formal plan. You actually have to have a strategy. And guess what? You actually have to tell somebody beside yourself that there is a plan and what the plan is, right? Like that's a big piece of it too. Like
Right.
I've been making a plan in my head for 30 years. I just haven't told anyone. Now it's like, okay, now I have to communicate what I'm thinking, communicate my expectations,
Right.
right, and then follow up based on what the expectations were, and did we meet them? If not, like what do we have to do to change to meet them next time?
Yeah. And I think that's another great insight, Ryan. Like how to get yourself out of the middle. Like if you're in a hole and you keep your head down and you just keep digging, you're just digging the hole deeper, right? But if you can realize to step back and how do I fill the hole to move forward, the filling of that becomes I get clarity, I get my plan, I get my goals and objectives, I get my KPIs, and more than that, I communicate it so that the team goes. A lot of times when I work with founders, they're like, I don't need a plan. I don't need this plan. It's in my head. I'm like, okay, let's be really clear. This plan is not for you. It's for the team to know what to do. It's for the team, to be able to put some gas into the engine here to go because they're not waiting on you to tell them everything. And I think it's also another
Yeah.
one of those breakthrough moments too. When you did that, did you feel like you kind of took the company from being like, hey, we're all about operations to, hey, we're now about building a company that runs great corporate and franchise operations? Did you kind of have that moment as well, Ryan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could give you an exact example. Like I just had we've had this meeting before, but we just did it again. We had a meeting with all of our general managers, right, where it was all about mission, vision, culture, what we're trying to build, right? And like I'll tell you, right in the beginning of the meeting, all the operators just started talking about operating, right? Like what's going wrong, how can we help each other? And I was like, guys, this meeting is not about our day-to-day operations. Like this is what this meeting was, right? And it was super participant. We had tons of participation. Honestly, one of the best meetings we ever had as a team, right? Everyone left that meeting like super pumped up. They felt clear about their vision. They were ready to go back and kind of tell all their team members about what we discussed, get their input. It was just, wildly successful, right? But you have to kind of set that tone. Hey guys, we are not talking about operations today. We are talking about our vision, how we're going to get better as a group, and like what our goals are in 3 years, right? So you have to help the operators fight that urge of like
Right.
there are bigger things here, right? We're gonna understand that and go towards a larger goal.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ryan, as you're growing now, right? If as you're growing and you think about where
Yeah.
you are right now, as a founder who's been there since the inception and now seeing your vision become a reality and now really finding that moment to accelerate your growth, what would be three things that you would say, man, these were the three key learnings I would share with every founder?
The one thing like I think we're kind of living right now, and it definitely it could be painful at times as well, is like we have chosen to move a little slower with our franchising, right? Like I think you'll see this is like everyone kind of goes, if you have a hot concept, I get it, you got to strike when the iron's hot, so you want to try to sell and open as many as you can. I totally understand that. You want to take advantage of the leverage, right? My whole thing was like I want to make sure we get a few of these open. I want to make sure the franchisees understand our model fully, right? Like this is our prime cost. These are the metrics you have to hit. Because like anyone in restaurants know, you could do a great revenue number and still lose money, right? So like if you don't follow the model, you don't understand, right? So like our one of the key things that we chose was like, hey, let's go a little bit slower. Let's get these folks open. Let's get these first few people open. Let's work through the kinks, right? And then
Yeah.
go from there. Because I don't know franchising, right? Like we're restaurant operators, right? We
Right.
opened our first franchises, and we wanted to learn with our franchisees, and we were pretty open and transparent with our franchisees. They're like, hey, this is new for us too. Like
Right.
this is a dual partnership. You
Yeah.
have to kind of give us some leniency. We're going to give you some leniency, and we're going to try to work towards success together,
Yeah.
right? So like that, going slow is definitely a key one.
Yeah.
Um, another one would obviously be people. I know I touched on it a lot on this call as well, but like choosing the right people, right, and hiring based on your experience with those people and not just what's on a piece of paper, I think is really important, right? Like there could be operators who are kick ass in Applebee's or other large chains, and nothing against them, but like they may not just fit your personality. They may not fit what you're trying to accomplish. So having those on the job interviews, taking your time with hires is just as important, because you have to make sure that they're going to be able to match your speed and your intensity, right? Speaking from an entrepreneur, right, and founders like you have here, like it's true we're built different, right? Like not everyone's going to match our speed, and like okay, that's fine, but you have to know that like if you can't match 100%, you got to match 80%.
Yeah.
Otherwise we're too young and nimble for you to be a part of what we're trying to build,
Yeah.
right? Like you may go plug into a system, right, but have you ever built the system? Because we're building the plane as we're flying it.
Right, right. No, I think that's really great. And does that also, so on a third note, would that also apply to how you select your franchisees right now too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like they have to, like I said, they have to be a personality fit, right? I think that's the biggest thing. Like when we got into this with my own partners, I was like, hey, I'm not franchising if I'm going to wake up every day and fight with franchisees. Like I have no interest in that. Like that is a miserable day for me. Right. So we want to be able to have a relationship with our franchisees that we can work through things as if they are, true business partners as they are. Right. So like, as everyone's money's green, and you want to take the check, and it's really hard to not take the check. And we turned down a few people in Florida when we first got going. Like, that's super hard to do, especially considering what we think we could do in Florida. But we're just not ready there. We're not ready to support them, right? So as hard as it is, you got to choose the right people. And as sometimes I'm like, okay, I think we're growing too slow, right? But I think in the long run that will pay dividends.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Ryan, it's got to be like, how do you manage that balance between, wow, I have a great concept. It delivers all the notes, it checks all the boxes, and I just want to get out there and go, go, go with it. Because that's the very entrepreneurial, mindset there. With the current path that you're on, which is like, look, we got to get it right. We have to build a solid foundation. We need to make it, we need to make it there. But then when you're getting lots of press and you're getting lots of people inquiring and they're like, how many more are you going to get? How fast are you going to grow? How do you personally, because I know a lot of people like say this too. I've got a great concept that came out of the gate. We did amazing. Now I've got so much pressure because everybody wants to know what I'm going to do next. How do you balance that between where you really want to go, where you are, and then also all the external voices that are like, you could do more, you could be faster? How do you kind of balance that as a person?
Yeah, I think what's going on internally is always the most important, right? Not that you don't want the support of your fans and your customers and your friends, right? That's like the motivational piece that makes you want to keep going, right? What's going on under your own roof and in your own four walls is the most important thing, right? If you don't have the four-wall profitability, like you could open up a bunch, but your life's you're on that like 3 year like curve where things are gonna get a lot more challenging in a hurry once you get a bunch open, right? So I think that has to lead the direction of our growth, right? Like we need profitable restaurants first. That is the foundation of what we're trying to build. If you can show that, right, then you could grow as fast or as slow as you'd want. Right. For me personally, like I do everything in my life too fast. I grocery shop too fast, right? I make decisions too fast. So if anything, like I'm trying to be a little bit slower, right, to make the right decisions and make sure I have people on my team who make up for my weaknesses, right? Like
Yeah.
I need somebody who's structured, who's organized, working with me to make sure I'm not just plowing a path with no structure behind it, right? But so I think you have to have those things in place, right, to make sure you have a sturdy footing and a sturdy ground, right? But anytime people are telling you you're doing great and you look handsome and all those things, it's like it's always great to hear. But you need to make sure that the perception matches the reality, right? And you're not letting people kind of paint a different picture than what your P&L says and what's going on in your own four walls, because that's the most important thing.
You know what? I love that. And I want to make a finer point on that for everyone that's listening. Like, hey, look, whether you have corporate stores or franchise stores or both stores, right? The number one thing, what I love what you're saying, Ryan, and I think this is where it sometimes gets lost in the growth, is that store profitability, four walls EBITDA is the most significant point of growth that everyone needs to be long-term successful. You can have short-term PR, but if you want to be long-term successful, the rest, when you have profitable restaurants, you have a profitable business and you have profitable franchisees. So I think, fighting those kind of entrepreneurial, thought processes is like go, go, and balancing it though with really what's the most purposeful thing to do is really, when we look at successful companies over the long term, you always go back to that. They had a great concept, great food, and they had a leadership and a founder that really, as much as those things were great, they were also great financially. And I think that is one that I wanted to emphasize that more, because that's one I find a lot of times gets glossed over. It'll be fine. We'll make the money. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But
and I think as a franchisor, like that comes with another set of challenges, right? Franchisees sign on, they want to see this immense growth right away. So you really have to be partners like, hey, like I told you we're going to grow slow. This is the reason we're growing slow, right? Like, okay, we're not opening more stores. I'm like, because we need to make sure you're making money before we go and do that, right? Like if you don't follow the exact system, you won't make money, right? Even, franchisees, like you have to, you as a consultant, like you know this better than anyone, like you have to get them to understand the impact that it has on them directly, right? To be able to get them to buy into the concept, right? So it's definitely a challenge to not grow super fast, to explain to your franchisees while you're taking a little bit of a slower approach and trying to get there, doing it the right way. But just like everything, it's got its ups and downs and challenges and opportunities.
All day long. But I think it's the idea of having that clarity of purpose, the clarity of the clarity of what the results we're trying to achieve, identified, and using that as the North Star to move forward with, right? And the clarity of the people that we want to do this with, right? Corporate, franchise, or team
Yeah.
members.
Yep.
So Ryan, if you were going to look back in time right now, over 7 years, what's one decision you almost didn't make, but then you went for it and it made all the difference in the growth of the company?
So I feel like our path is honestly maybe the opposite of that. It's like, how many decisions did we make that we shouldn't have made, right? And where would we have been if we didn't make those decisions, right?
Ah, that's so good.
It's like
Okay.
how many $100,000 mistakes did we make that we could have foregone, and where would we be without that, right? So like,
Right.
I'm a risk taker, right? That's why I am in the seat that I am, right? Like, you talk to my wife, she's like, "How do you own all these businesses? You're not that bright." And joking, I'm like, I agree, right? I like to take chances. I like risk. I think I've aligned myself with partners who are significantly smarter than I am, right? Who help to guide my decisions and help me to make sure I am on the right path, right? But I like taking the risk and taking the opportunity. So, like, to answer your question, like, I'm always going to lean towards taking the risk and then dealing with the consequences on the other side, right? Like, I remember to the day, like, when I chose to leave my 9 to 5 corporate job, like, I cannot live with myself if I didn't try to do this, right? If I just kept going down I was doing well, right? If I kept going down that route and never tried to do something on my own, right? And now I'm, taking chances every day. Like, now, I live for it. I crave it. So, like, there really wasn't many shots that weren't taken. It's more about, like, choosing your shots wisely and not just taking every shot, right? Like,
Right.
as I'm sure you
Right.
do with every entrepreneur, where it's like, okay, now how do you focus on the one opportunity opposed to just literally swatting at gnats every single opportunity that comes across you?
All day long. Right. And I think that's that power of clarity, right? And I think for everyone that's listening, I really, really want them to encourage to listen to this conversation like a few more times and take notes, or, however people want to record their notes. But I think that because what you're speaking to is, look, when I was clear as the founder, when I'm clear as the founder, when I'm clear about the path we're going on, when I'm driven by the fact that I want our locations to be profitable, that I want partners in my business, that, this is how we're built. We will go slower to be longer term successful than be fast and be blowing it up behind us. These are all critical decisions that I think sometimes don't get as much credit as they're due, but are the critical decisions that separate those from, the good from the great, from those that we talk about because it was an awesome brand for a minute, right?
Yep.
So I really hope that as founders are listening to this, and you're right. Everybody makes those decisions that cost us money, but we learn, they're priceless in their learning, even though they're painful in our bank account. But
Yep.
they really do help us grow and, make sure that we grow something that's healthy. So it's always fascinating to me. I always probably say this in every podcast too, that how fast the time goes, but time does go fast. So a few things that I just want to kind of bring this to a close on. One is, if you had one piece of advice for a founder who's sitting out there right now, stuck in the middle, like too big to be small and too small to be big, what would be one piece of advice you'd give that founder so that they can stay in, continue to be on their path and feel like my path is going in the right direction?
Yeah, I would say to turn off your phone, right? Like, try to escape the most you can. Take the 2 to 3 days to really, like, reassess and re-put those plans back down on paper, right? Like, okay, there's so much stuff going on. I need to take a step back. I need to remove myself from the entire operation, right? Nobody asked me a question about HVAC for a week, right? I need to sit here and understand what we're trying to accomplish and how we're trying to accomplish that, right? And I would say to also, like, step away and try to go to some conferences, right? I go to a few conferences every year, one of them being yours, right? Like, and it's not as much about the content, right? It's about the affirmation and the positive feeling I get from leaving the conferences that is what, for me, the whole purpose of the conference is, right? You go
Right.
there, you understand people are going through the same things.
Yeah.
You feel pretty good about yourself leaving, like, okay, I'm on the right path. I'm not too far off. I got to get back. And then that helps you get back to that place where you're trying to strategically plan again. Right. So like
Yeah.
that's my main thing is like you have to remove yourself from your bubble and get out there and see what other people are doing. Talk to people uh, in the same area that you are to understand how to get out of that stuck zone. Right. And like I said in the beginning of the podcast, like the stuck zone, it can be large and it can be small. You could be stuck in a stuck zone on a simple decision every day, right? You could also be stuck in a stuck zone when it comes to the growth of your entire organization, right? So I think if you approach each of your problems like that, you can take the same mindset to get yourself out of that, right? By really trying to strategically think about it. And easier said than done. I'm guilty of that as well. But if you, just like anything, if you don't practice, you're never going to get any better. So the more you practice, the better you get, and
Yeah.
one day you're cruising.
I love it. I love it. And I do love it. That's one of the things I love about our Founderology Growth Summit, right? Is it's founders presenting to founders with their
Yep.
practical solutions, their real life stories. I've been there. And I think that's one of the greatest benefits about how we've designed that, because you're really now part of a community. You could go to a lot of conferences, but this is the one where everyone in the room is a founder. So you don't have to sit there and explain yourself 100 times over. They kind of already get your handwriting and they're like,
Yep.
yeah, I was there. I remember when I was there. So, but I love this idea. And I think it's a really great point. Sometimes it comes down to mindset, right?
I mean, 90% of everything you do is mindset.
And so if my mindset is I'm stuck and I can't go, I love your solution is, hey, then get up and move somewhere else and shift your perspective. Because once I shift my perspective, I can shift my mindset. And I love that. Ryan, one other question. If someone were to come to Bango Bowls, what would you tell them to order? Because, I know my favorite, but what would you tell them to order?
Yeah, I mean that's easy. We have a few different menu categories, but I'll tell you that my top three items also aligned with my customers' top three items. Is if you're going to get an acai bowl, you get a Bango bowl. If you ever go to a restaurant, there's a product that is named after the name of the company. That's what you get because that's how they started. Uh, Two, we have a sweet potato cobb or a harvest bowl, which are salad and grain bowls. Those are killer. And then three, which is my number one favorite. Like I pretty much walk into a restaurant and somebody hands me one. That's how much I like it. The Purple Rain smoothie, which is just incredible. If
Oh
you
my
have a
God.
Purple Rain smoothie, I have you as a customer. That's a fact.
Really? Because okay, well, that may make me choose my smoothie next time because I'm a Bengal Boss smoothie with the
That's number two.
Southwestern, yeah, Southwestern chicken flanini. That's my other favorite. But
Yeah, that's
but
also good.
and Ryan, if people wanted to follow more about you and Bango, where could they follow up and start tracking your great journey?
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow us at our Instagrams at Bango Bowls. I'm on LinkedIn, actually an ex LinkedIn employee, so I try to stay up on there. Definitely get stuck, not keeping up as much, but you can find me on LinkedIn. You could email me at rthorman at Bango Bowls. Like I love these type of conversations. I love talking to founders. I love helping young entrepreneurs too. So you could reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to have a conversation.
Well, I want to say thank you so much. Today has been great. It's been great to, talk about the journey that I have some familiarity with, to hear how you're taking it to the next level, and I think the insights, the practical insights that you provided today is going to really help so many people listening to this podcast and so many more as you continue to go and they'll say, oh my God, I remember when he was on this podcast and now. So I just want to say we wish you all continued success in your journey with Bango Bowls, and I look forward to the opportunity of going out and visiting one soon. So thank you so much for the time today. And for everyone listening, thank you for continuing to tune in. Man, this is the place to get the real insights, the real solutions, and the real story of how to build your brand to break through. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to you joining us again soon.